Seeing somebody and thought, is this a good sign or a red flag? And genuinely not known which one it was, that confusion is real. What's happening is the difference between your intuition and anxiety. And once you understand the difference, everything changes. So let's talk about it. Not just the theory, but the real, lived, sometimes embarrassing truth of what it looks like when you get it all wrong. Because believe me, I got it all wrong plenty of times when I was dating. And I want to tell you exactly how and what finally changed. When I look back at my almost 10 years of dating after my second divorce, I don't see one dramatic moment where I ignored my gut and paid for it. I see a pattern, a slow, consistent pattern of overwriting what I already knew because I didn't want to be alone and because my self worth wasn't where I needed it to be yet. Here, a recap of some of those moments. The first man I ever met online, we were only together for about 5 months, but it was probably, should have been about 5 weeks. A few days after our first date, we were on the phone and we discovered that our sons had been best friends at camp the year before. It was this sweet, unexpected coincidence, but it felt like a sign. But what happened was that the connection between the boys slowly became the reason, an excuse really for him, for us to never spend time alone again on a date. After that first date, every time we went out, the boys were there too. Family dates, every single time. My gut knew early on that he wasn't ready to date, wasn't ready for anything real. He was recently divorced and he was scared. And I knew it quietly and slowly at first until it got really hard to ignore. But because it was my first time back out there dating, and because I didn't want to be the one to split up the boys, I let it go on longer than it should have. Then there was the guy I dated off and on for about 2 years. And I want to be really honest with you about this one because it's the one I'm the least proud of and probably the most important one to tell. He lied to me so many times about money, about jobs, about taking his medication, the medication he needed for his seizures, and then got behind the wheel of a car with my son in it. We broke up multiple times, at least four, and I kept going back, although him driving my son was the final straw. But I want to be honest about why. At that time, my self esteem was not where I wanted it to be. He was such a big help to me. He helped me around the house when he lived with me. He helped my son with his homework. He played basketball with my son. And my son really liked him. And I was exhausted from doing everything by myself for so long because I was a single mom with 3 kids. So I made a trade that I am not proud of. I looked the other way because the alternative felt harder. But my gut knew he wasn't the right one for me the whole time, pretty much the whole time. And every single time we got back together, I just kept overriding it because the fear of being alone felt louder than the truth of what I was seeing. And then there was the firefighter. 7 months in, I finally had that conversation. You know the one, the what is this and where is it going conversation. He said, let's not put a label on it. Let's just see where it goes. And I accepted that answer, which I shouldn't have, because 7 months in, you don't need to figure out what that something is. You already know after 7 months. The writing was on the wall, and I didn't pay attention to that either. And after a month, he ghosted me. And I was kind of actually surprised. But looking back, there's no way I should have been. My gut had been sending me signals for at least 2 months by then, the low effort, the lack of real depth. But I had fallen for that guy fast and hard. And when you feel that strongly about somebody, it's easy to stop paying attention to what they're actually throwing at you. And then, of course, came the 3 year relationship that ended with somebody ghosting me. 3 years, not 3 months or 3 weeks, 3 years. That was my breaking point. Not because it ended, I already knew it wasn't right, but because I finally was sitting with the truth that I had been avoiding, which was that I had been settling. Shock. Staying in things that weren't right, ignoring red flags, and calling it patience when really it was just fear, mostly fear of being alone. I couldn't keep doing it, and I knew that. And that's when I finally went back to therapy. And I mean, really went, not just showed up. I laid it all out there. I was honest in a way that I hadn't been before. And I got more involved in the personal development community that I was part of. I found accountability and real support there. And slowly, one honest conversation at a time, I started building something that I hadn't fully had before, which was real trust in myself. Before I go into the teaching part of this video, I just want to stop and acknowledge something that you might not know about or even have ever heard of, unless we're friends on Facebook or Instagram and you saw my post on Tuesday. This Saturday is National Toss Away the Should Haves and Could Haves Day. Yes, that's actually a thing. And the timing is kind of perfect because everything I just told you, every time I ignored my gut, every time I stayed too long and chose the wrong person, I could spend a lot of time and energy beating myself up all about it, right? And for a while, I did. But what I know now is that it's so much wasted energy. You can't go back and make different choices with the information that you have today, right? You made the choices you made with who you were at that time and with what you knew then, even if then was last week or yesterday. You survived all of it, and you're here now. So if there are should haves and could haves sitting on your shoulders or roaming around in your head right now, things you wish you'd done differently in your dating life or any of your relationships, really, this is your permission to let them go. Cue Elsa from the Frozen movie now. I'm not asking you to forget them or to pretend they didn't happen. I'm asking you to stop letting them take up space that belongs to your future. We're not going there today. We're going forward. So let's talk about the real difference between intuition and anxiety, because they can feel really similar, and confusing them is one of the most expensive mistakes you will ever make when it comes to dating. Anxiety says to you, what if? It's always about what's ahead. It's based in fear, and it's usually about the outcomes. What if this doesn't work out? What if I'm alone forever? What if I'm making a mistake? Ever say any of those things to yourself or to a friend? If so, congratulations, you're normal. Anxiety is your fear of the future talking. But intuition, that says, I notice. It's present tense, it's quiet, and it's steady and grounding. It's not panicking about what might happen. It's registering what's actually happening right now. That is the gut feeling. That's the pit in your stomach or your shoulders tensing without you even realizing why. And here's why it gets tricky. When you don't feel great about yourself, fear and intuition can start to sound exactly the same. You might walk away from something that's actually good because the fear of getting hurt again feels like your gut telling you to run. And when you've been through enough painful relationships, you can start seeing warning signs everywhere, even when there aren't any. That's why the inner work matters so much. Not because it makes you fearless, it doesn't, but because it gives you a baseline. When you know what it feels like to be okay inside yourself, you can start to tell the difference between a real signal and just your fear talking. Now, of course, chemistry makes all of this harder. When you're really attracted to somebody, it's tempting to ignore the things that bother you or don't quite add up, right? But that is actually backwards. The more you like someone, the more important it is to pay attention, not less attention, because strong feelings can make us blind to things we really need to see. So when the attraction is strong, that's your signal to look more carefully and more closely, not to run, but to pay attention. Use the chemistry as a reason to look closer, not to look away. I also want to talk about the too good, too fast pattern because I've been there and I see it a lot in women I work with. When somebody comes close to, or sorry, when somebody comes on very strong, very early, when it feels electric and intense and almost too perfect, our instinct is usually to lean, to abandon our rational brain and get swept up in it. And it feels amazing, right? Especially in the moment. But if it's the real deal, it can withstand a slower pace. If he can't wait, that's information. If the intensity feels like it's moving faster than actual trust is being built, you need to slow down. Not because it can't be real, but because if it is real, slowing down isn't going to break it. And if it does disappear the moment you stop matching his pace, you just learned something huge. Trust patterns over moments. One great date doesn't make a great partner. One incredible phone call doesn't either. Watch what somebody does consistently over time. That's where the truth always lives. And here's the thing about self-trust that I wish somebody would have told me earlier. It's not a switch that flips. You can't just turn it off and on, where one day you're not trusting yourself and the next day you are. It's a practice. Every time you listen to yourself and act on what you hear, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it means ending something or saying something hard, you build a little more of that trust muscle. Every time you override it, you chip a little bit away. So it compounds in both directions, meaning trust yourself more, the easier it gets to trust yourself. And the more you ignore yourself, the easier it gets to keep ignoring yourself. For me, building self-trust meant going back to therapy and actually being honest when I got there. It meant being a part of a community that held me accountable. It meant looking at my patterns without flinching and beating myself up about it. And deciding that I wasn't going to keep making the same choices and expecting different results, like the definition of insanity, right? It also meant finally learning to love myself, really love myself, not just say the words. Because when you love yourself, you stop being willing to accept what you know isn't right. The fear of being alone stops being louder than the truth of what you're seeing. That's when everything changed for me. That's when my husband Hugh showed up. And that's when I was finally ready for him and to receive that kind of love. So, practically, how do you tell the difference between your gut and your fear when you're right in the middle of it? Here's how to do that. You need to sit with it before you act. Don't make a decision from anxiety. Give yourself a little time and space and see which feeling stays. Intuition tends to be steady. It doesn't spiral. It doesn't catastrophize. It just quietly persists. Anxiety, on the other hand, tends to get louder and more frantic the more you feed it. So ask yourself, what am I actually noticing right now in this moment? Not what might happen, not what am I afraid of. What am I actually seeing and feeling right now? And ask yourself honestly, is my self-worth showing up here? Am I considering staying with something that isn't right just because I'm scared to be alone? Because if the answer is yes, that's not your intuition talking. That's your fear. And fear isn't a good enough reason to stay. Your gut got sharper with every hard thing that you have lived through. Every disappointment sharpened it. Every time you trusted somebody who didn't deserve it and survived that too, you sharpened it. The goal now is not to become closed off or cynical or so careful that you never let anybody in. The goal is to learn to listen to your gut loud and clear, to stop making excuses and explaining them away, what you already know, to build enough trust in yourself that when your gut says something to you, you really listen. And when that fear shows up, because it will, that's to be expected and normal, to be able to look at it clearly and ask yourself, is this my intuition protecting me? Or is it just fear trying to keep me small? You deserve to know the difference, and you are absolutely capable of learning it. And remember, we're only 2 days away from National Toss Away the Should Haves and Could Haves Day. So, whatever you've been carrying with you from your past, the choices you wish you'd made differently, the times you ignored yourself and paid for it, put it down. Let it go. You don't need it anymore. It already taught you everything it had to teach you. Now it's time to move forward. So type guide in the comments for my free guide, 5 Lies Women Over 50 Believe About Love and the Truth That Changes Everything. And if you're interested in doing this work inside of a community, the Becoming Her Sisterhood is coming in a few weeks in August, and the wait list for it is in the comments too, and I would love to have you. If this video helped you, please subscribe, because every week on this channel, we talk about real love, real growth, and what it takes to create the relationship you deserve, because your best relationship starts with you. See you next time.